She was mopping the lobby floor as usual when her voice rang out, "Fluent firm," in Mandarin, causing the CEO to stop in his tracks and leaving the entire company stunned. At the headquarters of Halberg International, the janitorial staff usually went unnoticed, not out of disrespect, but because their presence was like an invisible foundation. Quiet, steady, like elevator music, always there, rarely acknowledged. It was Monday morning in downtown Fort Worth, Texas, humming with the rhythm of urgency. Shoes clicked on the marble floors, fingers tapped rapidly on phones, conversations buzzed with talk of deadlines, and nearly everyone clutched a coffee cup like it held the secret to success. Jonathan Kellerman was on his way from the parking garage to his office on the 18th floor when he paused. A familiar yet distant sound reached him, like a breeze from the past. Mandarin. But what made him freeze wasn't the language. It was who was speaking it, not a visiting executive or a guest from the Shanghai office. It was a woman in a burgundy janitorial uniform, her short braids neatly tied back, standing next to the building's touchscreen directory. She was speaking with an elderly man in a navy jacket and thick glasses, clearly lost and anxious. She spoke gently, expressively, and with perfect clarity. Her voice flowed like warm water through stone, calmly guiding the man to the right elevator. Kellerman squinted. He had seen her before, quietly passing through the hallways after late meetings, always polite but never initiating conversation. He didn't even know her name, and now here she was, explaining directions fluently in a language most Americans couldn't even pronounce correctly. Have you ever discovered a hidden gem in the most unexpected place? Kellerman took a few steps closer, driven more by curiosity than authority. But that wasn't the end of it. As soon as she finished her Mandarin conversation, she turned to a delivery worker fumbling with his clipboard. She switched instantly to Spanish, surprising him. He nodded in thanks. Within seconds, she shifted to French, calmly helping a vendor who looked confused by mismarked boxes. She pointed right with a faint smile. Salé de confrères par l'autre code. It makes you wonder how many talents are overlooked simply because their job titles don't shine. Kellerman clenched his jaw, not out of anger, but something deeper, a twinge of shame. He had overseen global logistics networks, built cross-cultural training programs, hired countless interpreters, and yet the most astonishing linguistic talent he'd ever encountered was mopping floors beneath his feet. He stepped forward, this time with genuine interest. "Excuse me, miss." She turned, surprised but composed. "Yes, sir," he smiled softly. "Was that Mandarin you were speaking just now?" "Yes, sir." "You're fluent?" "Yes, I am. I also speak Spanish and French," she nodded, "and Portuguese, German, Arabic, Italian, Swahili, and I can read Latin, though I wouldn't call it conversational. What would you do if you discovered a genius hiding behind a janitor's uniform? What if you were CEO Kellerman?" Kellerman blinked. "You speak 9 languages?" "Yes, sir." No arrogance, no boasting in her tone. Just fact. Plain and calm like midday light. He stared at her, his mind processing a new reality. The quiet woman who had cleaned his floors night after night was a walking United Nation. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Denise Atwater." "Miss Atwater, would you have a moment to speak with me?" Denise raised an eyebrow, hesitant. "Right now?" "Yes, I'd like to talk in my office." He recognized that hesitant look. Not fear, but the reflex of someone used to being overlooked. She nodded slowly. "Oh." As they stepped into the elevator, he held the door for her. In the enclosed space, silence lingered for a few seconds. Then Denise spoke softly. "I've worked here 13 years. He turned to her. "Never thought I'd be invited to this floor." He gave a small, wordless smile. "You might be surprised how quickly life can change." But even he didn't know her life wasn't the only one about to change. The elevator dinged. Denise stepped out first, her footsteps light on the polished executive floor. The air smelled of citrus and leather. If wealth had a scent, it would be this. Kellerman's assistant looked up, eyes widening at the sight of Denise beside him. He gave a brief nod, signaling her to let them through. Inside the spacious, glass-walled office, he gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please, have a seat." Denise sat, hands clasped in her lap, eyes scanning the room, not in awe, but with quiet observation. Behind him hung a large world map covered in multicolored pins. On a side table sat a tray of espresso cups, a photo of his 2 daughters, and a dust-covered award from a Brussels trade summit. Kellerman sat across from her, leaning forward slightly. "Ms. Atwater, I'll be honest, I didn't expect to have this conversation today." She gave a small nod, her expression unreadable. "But I just heard you switch between 3 languages like flipping light switches. I have to ask, how does someone like you end up working in janitorial here?" She was silent. Her eyes flicked to the window, then back. "Do you have time for the truth? If I didn't, I wouldn't have asked." She exhaled, clearing the path for memories. "All right." She rubbed her hands together, warming up her words. "I was born in Toledo, Ohio. Only child. My dad was a welder, mom a nurse's aide. We didn't have much, but they taught me that education was the only way out. To them, learning was almost a religion. I received a full scholarship to Kent State University, majoring in linguistics. I was working on my master's when my mother fell ill." She paused, her eyes carrying a quiet grief. "I came home to take care of her. 6 months later, my father had a stroke and passed away. Everything unraveled after that." She tilted her head slightly as if rewinding a film in her mind. "I had a young child, no money, no support. So I did whatever I could. Grocery stores, nursing homes, temp work. Eventually, a cleaning supervisor here offered me a night shift. It allowed me to pick up my kid after school and keep the lights on. That's why I stayed." Kellerman watched her, didn't blink, just listened. "But I never stopped learning. I borrowed old textbooks, listened to audio tapes, read newspapers in 5 languages just to keep my mind sharp. Language, it's the one thing that still made me feel like I had purpose." Her voice wasn't shaky. It wasn't a speech or a poem. It was simple, familiar, like someone sharing their life over a warm kitchen table on a winter night. "Not many people ask me much," she added. "They just see the uniform and judge." The word judge hung in the air. Heavy, sharp. Kellerman leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of her story settle on his chest like a cold stone. Denise cleared her throat. "Mr. Kellerman, I'm not telling you this so anyone feels sorry for me. I'm not bitter. Life is what it is. I do what I have to. And I'm still doing it." He exhaled. Denise Atwater was extraordinary. That much was now undeniable. But she wasn't asking for pity, and she wasn't looking for a handout. She was offering him a gift, the truth, clear, unvarnished, and quietly devastating. "Have you ever thought about doing something else?" he asked softly. She shrugged slightly. "Sometimes. But it's hard to dream when rent shows up like clockwork." Another silence. But this time it wasn't empty. It was dense, full of unspoken things, possibilities, regrets, missed chances. Kellerman reached for a notebook and scribbled something quickly. "What are you writing?" she asked, her tone calm but now tinged with curiosity. He looked up. "Ideas. Though one of them is turning out to be a pretty big one." The conversation lingered with him all day. Whether reviewing budgets or calling suppliers, Jonathan Kellerman's mind kept returning to that morning. To Denise Atwater. Her calm voice, the way she listed 9 languages like she was naming her favorite breakfast dishes. "Did you know? Achieving fluency in a language takes more than memory. It takes years of discipline, endless curiosity, and above all, a resilient heart." Around 3:45 p.m., Kellerman left the executive floor and took the elevator to the service level in the basement. He needed to see something for himself. The air down there was warmer, the walls painted a smudged off-white, scuffed by cartwheels and work boots. He passed maintenance crews, break rooms, stacks of bottled water, and stopped outside the janitorial supply room. Through the open door, he saw Denise organizing microfiber cloths on a metal shelf. "Can I bother you for a moment?" he asked, stepping in. She turned, a bit startled. "You? Came all the way down here?" He smiled. "I haven't stopped thinking about our conversation this morning." Then he continued, his eyes more serious now. "I need your help with something." She wiped her hands on her shirt, looking attentive. "Could you assist me with something?" Kellerman asked, his tone bright with possibility. "What is it?" "There's a meeting upstairs. A partner team from our Sao Paulo office arrived early and our interpreter canceled last minute. Could you step in?" She hesitated for just a breath. "Portuguese?" "That's right. Yes, I can do that." A few minutes later, they walked into conference room 4C4. Brazilian executives sat there, slightly awkward, staring at their phones. The room felt tense, as if no one quite belonged. Denise entered quietly, nodded, and began speaking in fluent, confident Portuguese. Kellerman watched silently and saw something extraordinary unfold. It wasn't just language, it was connection. Shoulders relaxed, eyes warmed, smiles emerged. Denise wasn't merely translating. She was bridging worlds, helping strangers feel seen and heard. One of the guests cracked a joke, and Denise answered with a clever comeback that had the room laughing. Kellerman didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling. He understood that what had just happened was worth more than any contract. After about 20 minutes, the meeting ended. One of the Brazilian directors turned to him and said in English, "She's the best we've worked with all year. Where did you find her?" Kellerman glanced at Denise, who was quietly collecting empty cups. "Right here," he replied, his voice filled with respect. In the hallway outside, he hurried to catch up with her. "Have you ever worked professionally as an interpreter?" Denise shook her head. "I've just helped people at hospitals, government offices, places that needed someone who understood and could explain. I don't have credentials. I didn't have time for school. My daughter needed me more back then." "How's she doing now?" "She's 26. A nurse in Tempe. She paid her own way through school. Stubborn, just like me." They both laughed. For a fleeting moment, there was no janitor and CEO. Just two people sharing life stories. They returned to the service level, where Denise clocked in for her shift. She still had 2 more floors to clean before the day was done. But before she left, she turned back and said something that stayed with him. "I didn't do anything special today." Kellerman raised an eyebrow. "Not from where I'm standing." She smiled, then turned and walked away. That evening he sat in his car for a long time without starting it. His mind swirled with thoughts. The pressure to scale the company, investor meetings, diversity seminars, talent development initiatives. All this time, they'd been looking outward, recruiting from across the globe. And maybe, just maybe, the rarest gem had been right behind the glass wall, down in the basement where no one ever looked. And once we realize that, the biggest question becomes, what will I do next? The next morning, Denise's key card beeped at an unusual time. She had just finished cleaning the east lobby when Ron, her supervisor, tapped her on the shoulder. "Hey, Denise, Mr. Kellerman wants to see you again." She blinked. "Did I do something wrong?" Ron shook his head. "He didn't say. Just told me to send you up." Denise wiped her hands on a towel and walked down the now familiar hallway. But this time, everyone in the building saw her. Their glances didn't skim past her like before. They looked up, really looked, as if, for the first time, they realized she'd always been there. Some whispered as she passed. A receptionist even smiled at her, as if she knew something Denise didn't. When she stepped into the executive floor, she saw Mr. Kellerman standing by the glass window, holding a cup of black coffee, eyes fixed on the city skyline. "Come in," he said without turning around. Denise stood by the door. Only when he turned to face her did she take a step forward. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, setting the cup on a coaster, "about wasted talent, about how many people never get a chance, not because they're lacking, but because no one ever bothers to look twice." Denise stayed silent. She didn't believe in easy compliments. She'd seen too many people say nice things and do nothing. I want to create a new role, he continued, a title that's never existed here before, but one this company desperately needs, even if no one's realized it until now. She furrowed her brow. What role? International cultural liaison. Someone who can speak the languages of our markets, read between the lines, work with clients, vendors, international partners, all the global touch points we've been fumbling for years. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. You have the skills, more than some of our current leadership, and you've shown you have the intellect, patience, and poise to handle it. She squinted slightly. Is this for real? As real as anything I've ever done. He paused. I know you don't have a college degree, but I see something else, he continued. Real-world experience, resilience, and fluency in 9 languages. Do you think I need a piece of paper to recognize how valuable that is? She turned slightly, hand resting on the edge of a chair, not fully convinced. Why me? Because yesterday before 9 a.m. I watched you solve 3 problems in 3 different languages. He met her eyes. And because I'm tired of walking past people like you. People doing twice the work for half the recognition. Denise crossed her arms. You know what people will say. I don't care. She studied him for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. I've never worked in an office. Never had a title. You'll learn quickly. I don't have the right clothes. I'll have HR arrange a wardrobe stipend. She chuckled softly. You thought of that too? And trying. A long silence passed. Then Denise asked, her voice quieter. What about my shift? Who's going to cover it? Kellerman smiled. We'll find someone, but no one can replace you. They stood in silence for a while. Denise looked down at her hands, then back up. You sure this isn't pity? He shook his head. This is recognition, something you should have had long ago. She bit her lip, eyes glistening, but blinked before a tear could fall. Well then, she said firmly, let's see what I can do. He extended his hand. She shook it. But it wasn't just a handshake. It was a rewriting of history, a dismantling of assumption, a door opening, not just for Denise, but for every overlooked soul in the shadows. Neither of them could have predicted that just 2 days later, the entire building would know. The news spread faster than the elevators. Denise Atwater, the night janitor, was now an executive. No one knew the full story. Just whispers. Rumors spread like wildfire, that she spoke a dozen languages, that the CEO handpicked her. Some even guessed she'd worked for the government or was a secret agent, from cubicles to conference rooms. The story passed like a primetime drama script. Some were curious. Some smiled and said, she deserves it. But not everyone applauded. In the employee break room, 2 marketing assistants whispered over their salad bowls. I'm serious. I have a master's in international business. Been waiting 2 years for a shot. Said she was scrubbing toilets last week. Her friend shrugged. Maybe she knows something we don't. Oh, please. This has Kellerman's diversity initiative written all over it. Skepticism quietly crept into Slack messages, and behind closed-door meetings, a low buzz of jealousy mixed with confusion, because no one's used to seeing someone rise from the bottom step. Denise felt it the moment she stepped into her new office on the 12th floor. The room was simple, just a desk, a plant, and a computer still powered off. But to her, it felt like another planet. After the HR orientation, she quietly asked, "Can I keep my old uniform? Not to wear, just to remind myself." That afternoon, she had her first meeting with Victor, the head of international operation. He walked in, holding a clipboard, eyes sharp. No handshake, no seat. "So you're the new cultural liaison?" His voice, wrapped in velvet, sharp as a blade. Denise looked up. "That's what I heard. Ever worked in a corporate environment before?" She smiled. "Only from the outside looking in." Victor didn't smile. "I've got reports from Italy, contracts from a Dubai partner, and a supply chain mess in Sao Paulo. Think you can handle that?" Denise stood up. "Give me a few hours to review, but yes, I can handle it." Victor tossed the stack of documents onto the desk and walked away. Later that night, Kellerman stopped by her office. "How was your first day?" She sighed, leaning back in her chair. I've had worse. He chuckled softly. Victor gave you a hard time? Did scare me. I figured. Denise paused, then asked, "Can I ask you something honestly?" Go ahead. Hated now, why me? You could have just handed me a bonus and kept things the way they were. Kellerman leaned against the doorframe. Because I saw myself in you. She raised an eyebrow. You used to be a janitor. Oh. But I know what it's like to be overlooked. I grew up with nothing. My dad fixed cars in a town no one remembers. I worked 3 jobs all through college. People told me I didn't belong in rooms like this. Denise nodded slowly. And now, you're the one deciding who gets in. Exactly. They sat in a quiet moment, sharing a breath. Denise glanced down at the file on her desk. I'll be honest. I'm nervous. Good. That means you care. She looked up at him. Not as a newcomer feeling her way, but as a woman ready to rewrite her own chapter. Some people aren't going to like this, and let them not like it. They'll get used to it, or they won't. Either way, we move forward. Kellerman straightened up, his voice firm. You have a story, Denise, a real one, and now you've got a platform to tell it. He turned and walked out. As the door clicked shut behind him, Denise looked around her office. She thought about the hard years. Crying alone in bathroom stalls during lunch breaks. Coming home so exhausted she could only heat up a bowl of soup. She remembered the missed birthdays. The promotions that slipped away into the hands of people who never even said good morning. Denise opened a drawer and placed her old employee badge inside. Not to forget, but to remember exactly what she had to overcome to get here. But the story was no longer just hers. The spotlight was beginning to brighten, casting light on a truth that had gone unseen for far too long. That weekend, a new nameplate was installed just outside her office door. Denise Atwater, International Cultural Liaison. Black lettering on brushed steel. Elegant, dignified, permanent. This time, it wasn't a rumor. It was official. A company-wide email, sent directly from Kellerman that Friday morning, was short, clear, and powerful. He explained Denise's new role, her journey, and most importantly, her value. It wasn't framed as charity or a PR move. Just simply, she's the best person for the job. That's all. But that didn't stop the whisperers. Some managers mumbled behind closed doors. Others started changing their tone the moment they saw Denise in action. She coordinated international meetings more effectively than any translation software. She corrected contract mistranslations, errors that had quietly cost the company for years. And she didn't boast. She just worked quietly, effectively, beyond expectation. On Monday morning, Denise was invited to a meeting with a delegation from Morocco. The company's expansion into North Africa had been stalled for months due to language barriers and a lack of trust. She walked into the room wearing a soft beige blazer, took a seat at the table, and introduced herself in fluent Moroccan Arabic. The atmosphere shifted instantly. You could feel it, like a change in the wind. People looked up, they listened. Because when someone speaks your language, you don't just hear words, you feel seen. After the meeting, one of the Moroccan partners approached and gently touched his chest, a traditional gesture of gratitude. No one's ever done that for us. Not in our language. Not like that, Denise nodded. Because you matter. That's all. Midweek, Kellerman made another quiet change. He had the sign outside the company's main training room taken down. The room used for onboarding new hires and leadership workshops. A new plaque was mounted, the Atwater room. No party, no grand announcement, just a nameplate and a silent but profound acknowledgement. More meaningful than flowers or cake. That afternoon, Kellerman stood outside, watching a group of interns walk in. He overheard one whisper, "Who's Atwater?" A senior staffer answered softly. "She's the one who reminded this place that greatness doesn't have to wear a suit." Later that day, Denise found a sealed envelope on her desk. No return address, just her name, written in neat, blocky handwriting. Inside was a single note. "I used to think I would always be invisible. But today I stood a little taller because of you. Thank you." No signature, just a message, but enough to know someone was watching. Someone needed to see what was possible. Denise sat still, staring at the words, her throat tight. She didn't cry. She didn't need to, because in that moment she understood this wasn't just a job. This was a door, but not every door stays open forever, and someone was preparing to close it. The resistance didn't take long to surface. On Thursday evening, Denise was called into a meeting, not by Kellerman, but by Eleanor Craig, a senior member of the board who had just flown in from Dallas. She was a symbol of the old guard, impeccably tailored suits, words sharp as blades, and an unshakable gaze. Denise stepped into the small conference room on the 17th floor. Eleanor was already seated, a stack of documents in front of her, and an icy stare that didn't waver. "Sit," she said, eyes still fixed on the paperwork. Denise sat, back straight. Eleanor tapped her pen twice, then began. "Miss Atwater, I've reviewed your file. No college degree, no corporate training, no management certification." "That's correct," Denise replied, calm and composed. Eleanor laced her fingers and leaned back. "3 weeks ago you were a janitor here. I remember. But explain to me, how does someone with your background end up handling high-level international matters?" Denise didn't blink. "Because I speak the languages. I understand the cultures. I've revised 2 vendor contracts, cleared a 3-month gridlock in the Morocco deal. I also helped secure a verbal agreement with our Brazilian partners. The legal paperwork will be finalized next week." Eleanor pursed her lips. "You think this company should run on instinct and charm?" Denise smiled faintly. "No, ma'am. I think it should run on results." Eleanor paused. For the first time, Denise saw her hesitate. "I don't need to be liked," Denise added. "I just need to be useful, and I am." Eleanor stood, folding the file slowly. "You're a gamble. I'm used to that," Denise said quietly. "My whole life's been a gamble." After the meeting, Denise didn't return to her office right away. She stepped out of the building and sat on a bench across the street, eyes fixed on the glass tower. Once a place she'd passed by quietly for years. Back then, she wore a uniform, carried cleaning supplies, and often wondered, did anyone ever really see her? Now they did, and not everyone liked what they saw. Denise pulled out her phone and called the one person she always trusted. "Hi, Mom," her daughter answered. "Everything okay?" Denise hesitated, then nodded to herself, as if confirming it inwardly. "I just needed to hear your voice." "You sure?" "I'm sure." They talked for a few minutes, mostly about small things, grocery runs, her daughter's new puppy, a movie Denise wanted to see. But just that laughter was enough to ground her again. After hanging up, she sat quietly for a while, then stood, returned to the building, and rode the elevator back up to her floor. The next morning, word of the meeting with Eleanor Craig spread quickly. But what surprised people most, Denise didn't flinch. She arrived early, spoke during the team meeting, took a call from the German office and handled it in fluent native German. No interpreter, steady, sharp, unfazed. That afternoon, someone wrote a message on the whiteboard outside her office. "We see you." No name, no signature, just 3 words. But more meaningful than any award. In the weeks that followed, something remarkable began to happen. People didn't just come to Denise for translation help. They came for advice, direction, and confidence. She became the person people sought out before pitching an idea. We sat with interns, offering guidance before their big presentations, never talking down to them. One day, a shy Vietnamese intern named Bao asked, "How did you learn all those languages?" She smiled. "1 word at a time, just like you will." Denise wasn't just doing a job, she was shifting the culture. One afternoon, Kellerman sat with her in the break room. "I've been hearing a lot of good things about you," he said. She took a sip of coffee. "I'm trying to tune out the not-so-good ones. You're making waves." She looked at him. "Is that a good thing?" He smiled. "Around here, it means you're doing it right." He paused, then added, "I'm thinking of starting an internal training program, specifically for people in overlooked roles. There are more people like you in this building, I'm sure." She nodded. "There are. They just haven't been seen yet." He looked at her. "Would you want to help build that program?" She smiled. "I've already started drafting ideas in my head." By the end of the month, the pilot program launched, titled Voices Within, a new initiative giving employees from all departments access to language courses, leadership mentorship, and interdepartmental growth opportunities. Denise's idea, and it took off. She was later invited to speak at a logistics leadership conference in Cincinnati. He shared her story not as an inspirational fairy tale, but as a grounded wake-up call. I was never just a janitor, she said. I had language, I had skill, I was ready. People just didn't look long enough to see it. So next time you walk past someone without a fancy title, ask yourself, what might you be missing? The room fell silent. Then erupted in applause. On her way out, a young man approached, eyes red. My mom's a hotel housekeeper. She speaks 5 languages. I used to be embarrassed to talk about it. Denise placed her hand gently over his. Never be ashamed of where you come from. The only thing to be ashamed of is ignoring something extraordinary. She walked out of the building, standing taller than ever before. Not because of the applause, not because of the title, but because she didn't have to change who she was to belong. She carried every layer of her story with her, and that's exactly what made the difference. Never judge a person's worth by the clothes they wear, the job they hold, or the resume they present. Talent doesn't come with a uniform. Wisdom doesn't need a certificate, and brilliance might pass you by, carrying a name badge and a mop. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored, keep walking. The right people will see you. And when that happens, don't hesitate to sit in the seat meant for you. Better yet, bring a few extra chairs.